We're lucky that we have not lost as many historic buildings as some communities. But even so, we were losing too many. We worked very hard to get the city to adopt a historic zoning ordinance that would permit historic overlay on significant buildings or districts. And we're proud that we got that done. Since the ordinance was adopted, there have been about 45 individual structures that have been zoned historic. 2 districts have been designated. So we're pleased that we have the protection that overlay zoning provides for historic buildings. The municipal pool and complex was built back in the 20s. It was badly damaged in the 1936 flood. San Angelo had a really disastrous flood here in 1936. But we got the support of the Works Progress Administration, which came out of the Great Depression, and they did a remarkable job. Now we have another new project going on over there, which is city-sponsored, to update the pool again. Historic San Angelo organization is delighted that the bathhouse, which is quite nice, quite unique, is being put back to its original appearance.
I am a third-generation San Angeloan. My father was moved here by his father from Alabama in 1912 when he was 12 years old, and I felt so at home on Concho Avenue. He was always here. My grandfather, A.A. Gunter, owned a building next to Miss Hattie's that fell down and was hauled away in 1975. That's what got my attention. We did not really have large organized restoration groups here. We had several individual people that did some restoration, and I'm one of them. But I did that not because of historic preservation in the usual sense. I did it because it made me very sad to see my grandfather's building fall down. I wanted to do it for my own selfish reasons. East Concho, where we're located now, was almost totally empty. It began to really fill up when I finished these buildings and put them on national and state registers. And there was a lot of enthusiasm that generated as well, over and above what I did. What I did stimulated the next step.
You take one building that's been preserved and seen the life that it was given, that makes somebody else down the block want to take a building and create their own vision and its own life, and then somebody else sees it, and then somebody else. And so when you look at historic preservation, it's about one person who started the preservation effort, and then all those that followed, each with their own idea, own entrepreneurial spirit, and their own concept about what can happen. And that's great, because then what you have is a whole business district that is about retail, it's about restaurants, it's about bars, it's about booths, it's about a general store, it's about a clothing store, it's about all the things that make up a community, or if you will, a mall in a historic district. We just aren't under one great big overhead enclosed roof.
We are very much a supporter of entrepreneurs and the mom and pop concept, and we try very hard to support those who have been here for many years. I think Mercer Boots is a very good example. M.L. Letty's. How many communities can tout 2 family-owned boot makers that are world-renowned and both doing well? And of course, we're proud that they're in our downtown area, but we're proud to have them anywhere in our community. And that's just 2 examples, I think, of how we've supported and how valuable the mom and pop concept is to us.
The Tom Green County Courthouse is one of the most magnificent structures in all of West Texas. Built in 1928, it is so impressive. Those 18 columns across the front, they mark the center of not only government, but the center of this community. Tom Green County Historical Commission's had a relationship with Commissioners Courts and the District Court system for over 25 years. They know our name, they have our phone number, and they call. So we work really hard to educate our elected officials so that they make the best decisions, which in turn is a great success for all preservation activity in our county. Any large building that is a 1928 structure, whether it's a courthouse or a commercial property, needs a lot of love and attention. But before you can do the preservation work, you have to have people that love the building. And that's part of the Historical Commission's responsibility. We need our elected officials to love this building as much as we do. And that's not just for Tom Green County, but that's for every county in Texas.
There's just a way to do things that bring you into the future and do things in a nice way, but at the same time honor what you have. This building is the most recent effort to do some things in a private-public partnership. And so what you're seeing happen here is that the city has gone through borrowing the money and putting things in place to renovate the building itself and to bring City Hall, which is in rented space downtown right now, back into its home. So you'll see that come to pass. But not only that, you see some effort to work with the San Angelo Performing Arts Council to make sure that the Coliseum is renovated, and it's a spectacular space being brought back to a spectacular level. And that's being done with public dollars in the City Hall part, and then public and private dollars in the auditorium. If you look at the City Hall, you see what they are doing in the $11 million worth of renovation instead of looking for a new home. At the same time, you look at the fort, and it's owned by the city, which is remarkable. Most would be a state site or a federal site of some sort, but it's owned by the city. And one of the things that I'm proudest of for our city is only about 40% of their budget comes from the city, and 60% comes from events and private donations.
We were here as a frontier military outpost in the 1860s before there was a city. Fort Concho was first. The preservation effort here began in 1928, about the same time as Greenfield Village and Colonial Williamsburg. And Fort Concho, back in the wilderness days, as we would call it, in the 40s and the 50s, when the preservation work here was slow, but it was steady, eventually blossomed in the 60s and the 70s. We try over time to make sure that Fort Concho is tied very closely to the community and to our downtown. I mean, geographically, it's just over the bridge. And in recent years, the fort and the downtown have co-opted on a wide variety of programs, and we still remain one of the largest and highest profile tourism sites in the city. Our Christmas event in December is one of the largest of its kind in this part of the state. We are a major player in the tourism business, and that's what it is in San Angelo, and we're proud that we have partnerships with a wide variety of organizations, including the Downtown Group.
In the museum world, we certainly have distinctive kinds of museums, art museums, science, history, and so forth, but we see things we have in common. We all care very much about the community. A history museum may have greater emphasis, for example, on preservation, but an art museum, if we care about aesthetics and quality of life, certainly we care about preservation as well. There was an adjacent block of buildings near the museum, and some people said, well, let's bulldoze them. You'll have a better view of the museum, you know, and I call that the castle and moat mentality. You know, there's the castle, let's build a moat around it. Let's stand back and admire that beautiful building, but that's not the way we see the community. We see us as being integrated. We want life to ebb and flow in, around, and through the museum, and so those buildings, which were really quite decrepit, I mean, they would be pretty forbidding for almost anybody. We took it on, nevertheless, so we put our heart and soul to preserve that entire block and its relationship to the museum and the community as a whole. And then the other thing is we hope it's like a pace setter or a trend setter. I think the preservation ethic here has that snowball effect. I think back in the 80s, before the economic crash that occurred then, things were beginning to happen, but now it's a little different. There's greater sensitivity to really having a much better understanding of what preservation is all about, a better sense of preserving the original fabric. It's just growing in intensity.
One of the things that we've discovered is that historic photographs in particular are extremely interesting to people. We do a lot of work with people who buy a building and they want to restore it, and they come to us looking for photographs. We did a program last night where people wanted to see the old homes of San Angelo, and that's popular with people. They want to know. And the good thing is that we were able to show them what we allowed to be demolished as well as what we've maintained. And so it gives you some balance as to, gosh, we should have done better, you know, back in the 60s when we were modernizing things. But yet, on the other hand, you can kind of pat yourself on the back when you look at C.C. Walsh's home and say, I'm so glad that somebody cared enough to restore it. Our best student success stories have been with the Honors History program on campus. And we selected areas downtown. We divided blocks up, researched the buildings, who built them, when they first appeared, how they changed over the years, and then who were the people who had businesses there. And a lot of the banners that you see downtown are because of the research that our students have done.
Part of the revitalization of downtown San Angelo was to bring life into downtown. One of the issues were all these iconic buildings and structures that were vacant. One of them was the Cactus Hotel. We started the revitalization of this structure in 1992, and at that time the core of the city was absolutely in shambles. Today, the whole 89,000 feet is being utilized, and of the occupied space today, half of it is used either by nonprofit organizations or by quality of life type organizations that help the community. Downtown San Angelo, the organization, is a Main Street program that focuses on the revitalization of downtown San Angelo. One of the projects that we're interested in is the streetscape. We're working on a Freedom Grant to make accessibility for the handicapped in the whole downtown area and to enhance the areas that would otherwise just lay dormant or be weed-filled. And one of those is a program to develop pocket parks.
Celebrating our ranching heritage.
There's strength in numbers, and we realize the value of working together and seeing the return on investment, not just the dollar, but the human return on investment.
It's very much a part of our environment and the aesthetics of the life that we live. You know, there's that artistic element, certainly, but there's also a quality of life element that comes with preservation that's very important.